This Georgia coach is under some serious pressure in 2025. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, I know everyone is hoping that I just rant about Mike Bobo and Stacy Searles for the next 10 minutes. So let me get out in front of this, okay? This video is not about Mike Bobo or Stacy Searles, but it is obvious. Yes, those two are under pressure as well. Georgia's offense has to be better than it was last year. They have to take steps forward. So yes, those two coaches on offense, just want to get ahead of this, they are under some serious pressure too. But this video is about Dante Williams, Georgia's defensive backs coach. He was hired by Kirby Smart in December of 2023. And about 2 months ago, he earned the title of associate head coach as well. So, expectations are high for Georgia's defensive backs coach. And listen, they were not elite last year, right? We've seen elite Georgia secondaries in the past. Last year, they weren't terrible, right? They weren't a completely bad group, but they weren't really good all season long either. They definitely had some games where it wasn't great. Now they've got to replace two of arguably the best players in Georgia secondary last year in Malachi Starks and Dan Jackson, two of the safeties. They do have cornerbacks returning. They do have KJ Bolden, who could be an absolute superstar next year. They've got some other safeties who are coming around and are hoping to take that next step forward. But as a group, Georgia's defensive backs have got to start getting better. And they are also a group that needs to improve on last year. So this is, I think a big year for Coach Williams, who again is the associate head coach. This is his second year coaching the defensive backs. He's got some talent. He's replacing some experienced veterans. We'll see where things go. But Georgia's defensive secondary, they need to have a really good year because, again, they're going to go up against Arch Manning in Texas. They're going to go up against possibly, Ty Simpson in Alabama, Austin Simmons at Ole Miss. They're going to be facing some really talented quarterbacks, especially if they have a special season, get into the playoffs. They're going to be going up against some really good quarterbacks, actually. So that group has to improve. But let's talk about how they were last year. Georgia's defensive backs, they gave up 200 passing yards a game. Now, that's not completely on the secondary, right? That's part of the entire defense, right? But that's 38th in the country. That's not elite, right? It's hard to say that was even good, right? If you're 38th in the country at anything, there's a lot of room for improvement. So they gave up on average 200 passing yards per game. They were 35th in defensive passing efficiency. Opponents had an average of 121 quarterback rating. That was 7th in the SEC. Okay, that's, again, not great, right? That's something they can improve on. They were 30th in total defense. Now, that's not just about the secondary. That's, again, total defense, but the secondary comes into that. Against Alabama, they obviously struggled, right? Especially in that first half. Jalen Milroe, who is, again, not a great quarterback. He's a tremendous athlete who played his best quarterback, it felt like, against Georgia. He threw for 374 yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, Ryan Williams went off in that game for 177 receiving yards. And again, they're going to be going up against talented receivers too. So those cornerbacks are definitely going to have to improve. We've seen Dalen Everett. He took a big step forward last year, made some really big plays, especially against Texas. But the other cornerback spot is definitely up for grabs. We'll see, if Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones can kind of fight for that job. But it's up there, and those guys have got to get better. Michael Van Buren at Mississippi State. It's been a long morning, so I'm just kind of struggling to get through this early on, so I apologize. He threw for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns. Quinn Ewers threw for 211 in the regular season and more in the SEC title game. Daniel Harris is another cornerback that's got to step up and be better. He's the multi-year starter. That's the guy who I think is going to right now hold down that number 2 spot, but that's another guy who's got to improve. Kind of felt like they picked on him or tried to pick on a little bit during G-Day. I say pick on him. It's Georgia versus Georgia, obviously, but he had a lot of opportunities to make plays, and he did. I didn't think he had a bad spring game at all. That doesn't matter. What matters is what you do against Texas and Alabama and Ole Miss and Florida and Tennessee. Michael Van Buren with Mississippi State threw for 306, 3 touchdowns. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers wasn't great against the Dawgs. I'm not trying to say that. He obviously turned the ball over and he lost both times. But Jackson Dart, Austin Simmons, they combined for 18 for 28 for 263 and 1 touchdown. The defense is not why they lost that game. And the secondary is not why they lost that game, but the numbers are there. They can improve on that. Giving up 263 through the air, 1 touchdown. That can be improved. There's no doubt about it. Haynes King was outstanding. Not only on the ground, but through the air. He threw for 303 yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia's defense and that secondary. So again, you had games last year where it wasn't all great, right? And we've seen Georgia be outstanding in the secondary in recent memory. But do they have a Kamari Lassiter back there? I don't know, right? It doesn't look like it. And again, Dalen Everett, I think could be one of the best cornerbacks in the SEC, but does he have that dog in him, that fight, that leadership, that pride, that just aggressive nature, especially against the run? I'm not sure they've got that type of guy. Javon Bullard, Chris Smith at safety, maybe KJ Bolden can turn into that. Again, they're missing Malachi Starks, is just going to be huge. Dan Jackson, him not being there, that's going to be huge. So if you're Dante Williams, again, you've got to replace 2 starters. And you have to improve on last year, and maybe they're not as talented across the board. You can make that argument that they're not without first-round elite talent, right, in Malachi Starks and a guy, Dan Jackson, who's been around forever, right? Those are hard guys to replace. But Arch Manning and that Texas offense coming to town, the secondary better be ready. Alabama coming to town. Ryan Williams still plays for the Tide, right? And I guarantee you Dante Williams is going to be coaching those dudes up hard that whole week, saying, hey, this is what he did to y'all last year, right? Julian Humphrey, obviously not on the team. He got ran out of town. He did not have a great game against Alabama, but and again, he's no longer there. But KJ Bolden didn't have his best game. He was obviously a true freshman, so it's hard to throw him out there and say, go get it, kid, right? Have a big day in Tuscaloosa. He is one of the best players on the entire roster, on the entire team. So you would expect him to take a big step forward and kind of lead that secondary, especially at the safety spot. But Dalen Everett needs to continue getting better. Daniel Harris, if he can, continue to get better. If not, Ellis Robinson needs to be ready. DeMello Jones needs to be ready. We'll see if, Adrian Maddox, the safety they got out of UAB, can come in and really help. Zion Branch, Zachariah Branch's brother, they brought him in to compete at depth, possibly earn some playing time. Jaden Harris, a kid from Miami that, I think folks down in Miami were they weren't sad to see him go, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't really know what Georgia's getting there, but they brought guys in for a reason. They need depth, but they need playmakers in the secondary. KJ Bolden's one. Dalen Everett's one, because those guys have made plays before. Daniel Harris, hasn't been making those big-time consistent plays. We'll see if he can turn into that. If not, the cornerbacks behind him need to step up, and that goes to coaching. You've got to coach up these extremely talented guys. Ellis Robinson is too talented to be on the bench very long. He has got to start proving that he can be the guy they recruited, right? That top 3 player in high school. And Dante Williams, it's his job to coach these guys up. It's his job to make Dalen Everett better and better. It's his job to make KJ Bolden take him a step forward. Now, Travaris Robinson is the safeties coach. Assistant defensive coordinator, I believe, is another title that he has. He's got his hands involved as well. But Dante Williams, again, if you're promoted or you get the title of associate head coach, you're also the defensive backs coach, not just the cornerbacks coach. He's the defensive backs coach. I think he's got a lot to prove, because they cannot go backwards in the secondary. If they do, they're going to have a lot of problems defensively, and it's going to turn into losses. Right? Everyone always says, everyone knows when a cornerback or safety doesn't do their job, right? If you're on the defensive line and you get stopped and pushed backwards, it's easy to overlook that. But if you're a cornerback who gets beat deep down the field, or if you're a safety who's not in the right position, everyone knows it. Everyone sees it, right? You're the last guy back there. And Kirby Smart's going to have his hand into this as well. He's a former safety, right? He pays close attention to the defensive backs. He knows how important it is to play sound, efficient, smart football back there. And again, I think Dante Williams has a lot of pressure on him to not only make the guys that he has better, but for them to, as a whole, take a step forward, because they are going to be tested in a lot of different ways next year. So obviously, Mike Bobo, Stacey Searles, they've got a lot of pressure on offense. Trey Scott could be at Georgia forever. People would love that. And then Glenn Schumann could be there forever. I think Travaris Robinson has the respect of just about everyone. That guy knows what he's doing. Coach Dribe on the outside, the edge defender, we'll see. I think this could be a big pivotal year for him too, finding those pass rushers. But Dante Williams is a guy that I think is under some real pressure, and he's there's a lot that he's got to do, I think, to get Georgia back to playing at an elite level in the secondary. We'll see how that group turns out. I think there's a lot of promise. I think there's a lot of potential. But at the end of the day, he's got to make sure those guys are ready to go, because they're going to be tested in a big way this upcoming season. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Let me know what you think about this video. Am I right? Am I wrong? Agree, disagree? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the website.